What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I'm your host, Elliot Harrison, and I am pleased to be joined on this mock draft Wednesday with @Marcus_Mosher. Hello.
Elliot, it's my favorite time of year. We're about 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. We've got rumors and rumblings and whispers all over the place. Fired up for today.
You want to talk about our little trade that we had? It's the only newsy item we have.
Yeah,
not really.
Yeah, we can. The Detroit Lions traded Jeff Okudah, former number 3 overall pick, I believe, it was a couple years ago, to the Atlanta Falcons. And believe it or not, it's going to have an impact on the mock draft that we have coming out today.
Do you think Jeff Okudah was worth a 3rd overall pick?
No, but the hard part is when you have a young corner that suffers an Achilles injury, and that could really mess you up. So corners rely so much on speed and quickness, being able to, make quick movements. It's just a tough injury for a corner.
Yeah, I understand. I just, when we start talking about draft value and these draft picks are just so protected, with teams. Yeah. Nobody wants to trade their top picks for a veteran that can help them win. And I still think it's silly. I still think we overvalue draft picks
100%.
Even that high up. So that's kind of my thought on it. But obviously not a lot of news going on in the NFL outside of a lot of mock drafts, but we haven't done a mock draft yet. So I asked Marcus to do his top 16 for today. We'll get to 17 through 32, our part 2 later this week. But we want to start. We're not going in descending order for a change, by the way. That would be a little weird. We went 16 down to 1. Yeah. Marcus caught me on that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. We should probably start with number 1. We always go in descending order, bro. Yeah. So let's start with number 1. Carolina's on the clock. I do have a question for you, but who is the pick?
But a lot of rumblings that maybe Bryce Young is the favorite to go there, the shorter quarterback from Alabama. But I went with C.J. Stroud from Ohio State.
Oh,
I just think he checks enough boxes for a Frank Reich quarterback. I think he's the most accurate quarterback in the class. And I think, again, relatively safe here at number 1.
Yeah, 2 thoughts here. A couple years ago, Mac Jones was referred to as the most accurate quarterback of his quarterback class. Yep. And now he's reportedly on the trading block with the Patriots. So it's always interesting with that. I do think accuracy is still extremely important, but it seems like making plays off schedule has become more important in today's NFL. My other question, though, for you just on this pick, do you wish the Bears had held tight?
No, because I think the Bears, that roster really needed to be revamped and trading back and picking up all those draft picks, adding DJ Moore. I think it was a smart move by them.
I do too. It just seems like every time a team doesn't need a quarterback, and right now we don't think the Bears need a quarterback. I think most of us are hopeful Justin Fields keeps progressing. We always want them to trade out. And I'm like, I don't know. If you can get your pick of the litter of any position player, I do think sometimes it's worth it. We always want the non-QB needy teams to trade out of the top spot. Am I wrong on this? Every time.
Yes, every time.
On the subject of QB needy teams.
Yeah, the Houston Texans. I saw a report yesterday from Adam Schefter that, hey, the Texans might not draft a quarterback at number 2. They might just, wait it out. It's like, did you guys not watch Davis Mills and every other quarterback that they threw out there last year? I've got them taking Bryce Young. The size concerns me, Elliot. He's 5'10", played at like 185. But
easy there, Turbo.
It's small for an NFL player. Let me just say that. But I think this is number 2. Take a risk on him because I thought he was the best player in football last year.
I think the Texans did the right thing last year. It's easy to criticize in hindsight. Davis Mills showed a lot of promise towards the end of the previous season, and I think they needed to see what they had. And plus, Davis Mills was not like a 7th-round pick. I believe he went in the 3rd round, if I recall. You always get those better than I do. Yeah. I think they did the right thing. They saw what they had. They didn't like what they saw, or at least we think they didn't. And I really would question Houston not taking a quarterback here. Let's go to number 3, Arizona. They're not drafting a quarterback.
They are not. Now, I think this pick has a great chance to be traded. But let's play a little game really quickly. Dennis Gardeck. Is that my local sheriff, or is that the starting edge rusher for the Cardinals right now?
That's pretty good.
Their edge guys are Mosher Sanders, Cameron Thomas, and Dennis Gardeck. They need an edge rusher. Willie Anderson, the most productive pass rusher in the history of college football, seems like a perfect fit here.
I think Dennis Gardeck right now is at Waffle House complaining, why don't they have cinnamon rolls? I think that's exactly that's what that name sounds like to me. Good one. All right. Number 4, Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, this one's a little bit trickier. Do they take Will Levis, who's a little bit more pro-ready, or do they take the big swing on Anthony Richardson, who I have them taking? I just say Shane Steichen, their new head coach. He's worked with a lot of really athletic quarterbacks before. I think you pair him with Jonathan Taylor and you really try to run the ball the first couple years there. I think that makes some sense.
Hey, we've said it before. Make them play 11 on 11. Make defenses have to play the way defenses have to play, say Philadelphia.
Yes.
It's instantly going to make your offense more effective between the 20s, and quite frankly, probably more effective in the red zone too, in short yardage situations if you have a quarterback that's mobile, just as long as you don't make your quarterback your thumper. And I think the key there is doing whatever you can to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy and having a little bit of a running back rotation, although I still think he's a great player.
I think the example would be like to do what the Titans did with Vince Young and Chris Johnson. Was that back in 2008? Right, where they used Vince Young a lot in his legs. They had a dynamic running back in Chris Johnson. I think that the Colts could replicate something like that, especially with their defense. So,
2008 they had Lindell White, who was their thumper. He ran for about 800 and something yards. Chris Johnson had 1,000. That was his rookie year. 2009 is when Chris Johnson had that just ridiculous season. Let's go to number 6, Seattle.
Or number 5.
Number 5. I'm sorry.
Yep. Seattle Seahawks. I have them taking Jalen Carter, who is widely viewed as the top player in this class. I think Carter's going to need to go to an organization that is pretty established, and the head coach doesn't need to worry about losing his job, and the GM doesn't need to worry about losing his job. Plus, the Seahawks have a huge need at defensive tackle. I think this is where Carter eventually ends up.
Yeah, we did a podcast with Chad Ryder last week, and you guys talked about how Jalen Carter is a little bit of a lightning rod prospect in this draft, but that he would go somewhere in the top 10. We talked about having a stable organizational culture, which the Seahawks have. A lot of teams, though, could use a quality defensive tackle in this draft for sure. Let's go to the Detroit Lions. They are actually picked number 6, and I'm really curious what you have here.
Yeah, so we had them trading away Jeff Okudah. Now, they did sign Cam Sutton, a guy that can play outside, but mostly a slot corner. I think they need another outside corner.
Yeah,
Christian Gonzalez from Oregon, top cornerback in this class, long, athletic, just no really warts in his game. I think he makes their defense better.
You know, I think for some people, 6 still sounds really high to draft a corner. And I understand that. But, man, it's almost like you can never have enough of these guys.
Exactly.
You know, you have 2 good corners. Yeah, how about 3? It's just one of those positions that's, especially with teams going to shotgun and 4 receiver sets so often. I like this pick. I think the Lions need it. Let's go to the Raiders, because the Raiders have a lot of needs.
Yeah, and especially on defense. Their secondary is pretty awful right now. Yes. I don't think most people could name a single starter in their secondary.
Bottom 3 in the league?
Yeah, easily. I got them taking cornerback Devin Witherspoon, who doesn't have the size or the athleticism as Gonzalez does, but he's physical. He can tackle. He's aggressive. He's the type of cornerback that the Raiders have been missing for the last couple of years. He gives them an attitude on defense.
Is this a little high for him, do you think?
Probably.
In your average run-of-the-mill mockdraft.org?
Probably because usually 185-pound corners aren't drafted inside the top 10, but the Raiders have such a significant need that they almost have to make it.
Well, hopefully the draft magazine you read this weekend that was missing players at least had this guy listed.
He was.
He was in there. That would be important. Let's go to pick number 8, the Atlanta Falcons. We talked about them earlier with the trade with the Lions. Falcons needs are kind of all over the map. I go to front 7 kind of instinctively, but they could add to their receiver core. There's plenty of places they could go.
They could. I really like the addition of Calais Campbell. They still have Grady Jarrett, but what they need is that premier edge rusher. And I've got them taking Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, 6'5", 285 pounds, a ridiculously long wingspan. Reminds me a little bit of like young Aldon Smith with the 49ers. I think he fits well in Atlanta's defense.
How about Javon Curse?
Heck yeah. What a fun player.
I like this pick as well. I think it definitely fills a need, and just kind of predicting, you don't normally want to just go need this high in the draft. You want to take the best players that are out there, but if the best player out there is arguable and it fits a need, that's when you really can hit a home run as an organization. Let's flip the rundown and let's go to pick number 9, Chicago Bears. Of course, Chicago was in the number 1 spot. They made a trade. Of course, they have DJ Moore now from Carolina. I'm guessing you're not going to have wide receiver here. Nope. I wonder if I could guess what position group Marcus was like. I bet you looked at offensive line. But I think you're hitting Matt Eberflus's defense. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I really, really thought about that. But they need to do everything possible to make Justin Fields a franchise quarterback. And I thought the offensive line was improved last year, but not quite good enough. So I've got them drafting Peter Skoronski, offensive tackle from Northwestern. And I want your opinion on this a little bit. So Skoronski only allowed 6 pressures last year, but he doesn't have that ideal length, only 32-inch arms. Just in general, how much does that stuff matter for you? Because I don't think he's going to be probably a left tackle in the NFL. He might be a guard. He might even be a center. Is this too high to draft somebody that might have to play inside in the NFL?
There's 2 kind of ways to look at this. Number 1, the concerned way, which is what you're alluding to. What was that you were drinking? We could use a sponsorship.
It's a classic cold brew coffee from Venice.
All right, very good. I hope you guys are listening. Everyone in the NFL is going to have longer wingspans than the guys you played in college and the guys you played in high school because it's put at a premium. We just talked about a pass rusher for the Falcons who had a long wingspan. But at the same time, when you're talking about arm length, Peter Skoronski's lived with these arms his entire life. Okay? It's not like he just showed up at the NFL. He's like, what do I do? My arms are only this long. What am I going to do? Literally, they've adapted their game. My guess is less wait and see when you're playing tackle and more punch, more use your hands, get them out there early. That's how you adjust. No, this would not be a big concern. As long as the tape is great and they play at a major school, not that that always matters, but they play good competition, then I'm not totally concerned.
And the other thing is I hate helmet scouting because it's not really the right thing to do. But we did just see a Northwestern left tackle who had 33-inch arms get drafted by the Chargers 2 years ago, and he was a Pro Bowl player in
really
year 1. I don't know if Skoronski's at that level, but we have seen some of these guys work. So I think for Chicago, this is a pretty safe bet because worst case scenario, I think you move in the guard and you get a pretty darn good player.
I mean, I go to the kind of the Bill Walsh philosophy. Does you help your football team? Yes. Like, should Peter Skoronski be pick number 20 versus pick number 9? It doesn't matter. Pick 29. If he helps your football team, then that's all that really matters. I can name so many first round busts, even this high. There's probably more busts at number 9 than Pro Bowl players.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Go for it. Number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're just putting more tools in the tool shed, man.
This one's tough because they don't have any clear needs. I think corner would have been one of them, but the top 2 corners were off the board. I went with Kalijah Kancey, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh that we talked about last week with Chad Ryder. He's small. He's not very long, but man, he's productive. And we've seen even Jaron Hargrave, who they had last year, He's another small defensive tackle that was awesome for them. So bringing Cansey, playing in sub packages, play him on third downs, I think he can be productive right away.
Yeah, these smaller defensive tackles and sometimes these larger defensive ends can kick outside or inside.
Yep.
So it can kind of help your rotation. Now, I don't know how much Cansey was able to play defensive end in college.
He did play quite a bit.
You know, let's not forget the Eagles took a defensive tackle with their first round pick last year. But Fletcher Cox is getting older. Brandon Graham, defensive end, getting older. You know, they have some veteran guys that definitely need, you know, less reps on the field and more time on the sideline to keep their legs fresh. I'm fine with this pick. Let's go to Tennessee because I'm really curious about what Tennessee is going to do this year, what their MO is going in the draft.
I contemplated a trade where they went up to number 3 to get Anthony Richardson, but decided not to do any trades in this mock. Instead, I have them taking Paris Johnson, an offensive tackle from Ohio State. Their offensive line was decimated last year. Plus, they lost Taylor Lewan in free agency. This guy played guard last year or in 2021, left tackle in 2022. He just seems like the type that Mike Vrabel wants on his offensive line.
They took an offensive lineman in either 20 or 2021 that literally was gone within a year. Yeah.
Isaiah Wilson. Yep.
And then you just mentioned them losing Lewan. You know, I got to tell you, Marcus, I pretty much am agreeing with all of these picks. You really did some real work, like doing this mock draft.
Actual work.
You went to the shop, the little shop that has the giant cinnamon rolls, and got a coffee and really thought this out because I didn't. Tennessee is hard to predict, though, aren't they?
They are because I feel like they are a team that they're in a little bit of an identity crisis, right? Like, what are they? They've got too many old players on their team. It's clear that core just isn't going to be good enough anymore. So do they go all in for a quarterback, or do they invest in their offensive line, see what this year brings, maybe bottom out, and then revisit the quarterback situation next year?
The thing is they're in the weakest division in the AFC. And they're in arguably the weakest division in football, although I give that to the NFC South. I'll give AFC South the 7th spot. So Tennessee has always got a chance, you know. But staying in the AFC South, Houston Texans are up again on the board. What a great opportunity for them at spot 12 and at spot 2 to really fortify this team with new head coach and D'Amico Ryans. Who you have them taken?
So we went quarterback at pick number 2 with Bryce Young. Let's go get him a playmaker. Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. When he was at Ohio State in 2021, he outproduced Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. In fact, if you add those stats together, they almost match what Jackson Smith-Njigba did. Probably more of a slot receiver, but he gets open all the time. He's tough. He's so good at running routes. I think he's the type of player that D'Amico Ryans is absolutely going to love on that offense.
How many good wide receiver prospects have come out of Ohio State?
I mean, my gosh.
If we even go a little farther back, Curtis Samuel played at Ohio State, didn't he?
Yep.
If you want to go farther back, Joey Galloway, I believe, played at Ohio State.
Michael Thomas.
Terry Glenn, Michael Thomas. You want to go way back? Chris Carter played at Ohio State. My gosh, but just in the last 5 or 6 years, they've had just a stock full of really good prospects.
And we should also mention Jamison Williams wasn't good enough to crack the top 4 at Ohio State. So he had to transfer to Alabama to play. So they also have a guy by the name of Marvin Harrison Jr., who just had one of the best seasons in college football history last year. Absolutely loaded.
I know there's a really old, awesome Ohio State receiver, like going way back, and I just can't think who it is. It's going to drive me nuts. Okay, New York Jets, a team that a lot of people think are on the move, but they're in a really tough division. The old Aaron Rodgers weight game continues on. So what do the Jets do? I'm assuming they're going to have Aaron Rodgers by the draft. Is that the way you kind of approached it when you did their pick? Okay.
And I approached it with the thought of we need guys that can come help us right now, because I think there's better players on the board than the player I'm going to talk about right now. But Darnell Wright, a right tackle from Tennessee, was phenomenal last year. He shut down Willie Anderson, the Alabama rusher that we had number 3. The Jets have a need at right tackle. And instead of messing with some of these guys with more athleticism or more upside, they grab a plug-and-play starter with a bunch of experience who can help them right now.
And put him right next to Laken Tomlinson, right?
Yep, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And now you're not counting on Mekhi Becton either.
How is his run blocking?
Fantastic.
Okay, great. Because you can run Breece Hall to the right, maybe get 1,200 yards out of him this year if he can stay healthy. If you have Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have better quarterback play. Anything's better than what they had last year. They've got pretty good receivers. Things are looking up. They went and got the tight end from Cincinnati last year. I tell you, the Jets are going to be tough. If they nail this draft and they get some, day one contributors, that'll be really awesome. New England Patriots, obviously in their division, probably the weakest team, as odd as that is to say, in the AFC East. So what do they do here at we're at pick 14?
I really struggle with this with LA because I think they could go in a number of different directions, right? Like, could they use a pass catcher? Absolutely. Could they use offensive line help? Yes. But the Patriots
quarterback?
Well, maybe, right? Maybe. They're just different in the way that they draft. So what I did is I took one of the best players on the board, Myles Murphy, an edge rusher. Matt Judon had a really nice season. Mm-hmm. Josh Uche is a pass rush specialist. But what they really need is another one of these long athletic guys that can play on the edge and run downs. And that's Murphy, 6'6", 275 pounds, ran a 4.53. He just seems like a Bill Belichick defensive lineman that can play as a 3-4-5 technique, a 4-3 base end. You can kick him inside a 3 technique. It just seems like that's a type of guy that they love.
What's his size again?
6'6", 275, ran a 4.53.
Okay. I thought you said 245. And I was no.
275.
Okay. Yeah.
They love the big guys.
Yeah. You answered 2 questions that I had. Number one, why don't the Patriots just take best player available? Whoever's the top guy on your board, take him right here.
Yep.
And can he set the edge on rundowns? That is something that they really need. So if this guy can do that, then that's a great pick for them. I'm not really thinking that Buffalo is going to be running the heck out of the ball, but I think Miami will, and I think the Jets will.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be really important in their division. Let's go to the Green Bay Packers, one of the really interesting teams. If you one of the better podcasts we've done recently was our over-under on the win totals for the NFC. Mm-hmm. We thought the Packers were the biggest bargain. They're like at 7 or 7.5 wins. If they can get a guy right here that could come in and start day one, I think this team is a sleeper. Who do you have that guy being?
Let me ask you this. If there's one position you think they need to upgrade, where is it for you?
Oh, you see, I would like for them to get more pass rush help, quite frankly. But you've already taken some of the good pass rush guys off the board, so that throws me off a little bit. So then I start looking at wide receiver.
I thought about wide receiver as well, because that was my exact thought. It's just I don't love any of the guys here at 15, but I went pass rusher because Kenny Clark is getting up there in age a little bit. Rashawn Gary coming off an injury. They just really haven't been able to find another guy. Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, 6'5", 275, played all around in that defense. Green Bay likes to kind of shift guys all over the line. I think Van Ness plays really, really hard, would fit well in Green Bay.
Well, they're going to need him. That's for sure, because the division isn't going to be easy for them this year. They probably, granted, Aaron Rodgers didn't have a great year last year, but we don't know how many points they're going to put up. So holding teams down is going to be at a premium. Detroit got really good quarterback play from Jared Goff. We think Justin Fields is on the upswing, and then you got Kirk Cousins in the division.
Yes.
So this is, again, another good pick by you here. I'm really shocked at this. I thought I would argue with you a little bit, but I like what you're doing here. Although I'd say of all the teams, I might be the most curious about the next one. Tennessee, I definitely was, because I didn't know what their MO would be, something you talked about. Washington could go a lot of different directions. And when you're picking 16th in the first round, it's kind of like every single option is available to you. It's not that hard for you to trade this pick down, because it doesn't take the King's ransom that, say, pick number 7 takes or pick number 5 takes. A lot of the great players that you had at the top of your board are gone. Yes. So, and then do you pick for need? If you're a quarterback needy team, this isn't the greatest spot because you're not quite high enough. So then you may try to trade up. But you don't have any trades here. So I'm guessing you didn't go with a quarterback.
I did not go with the quarterback. And I think they want to see what Sam Howell has. I don't necessarily agree with it. But to me, doesn't this feel like a sink or swim season for Ron Rivera? Like, he's got to win this year, right?
It does. So I have some guesses here. What you did since this is our last pick. All right. I don't think you hit the talent outside. I think you're looking up front at their offensive line, and I think you're looking at their secondary. The problem is you've already taken some good defensive backs off the board. Now, the best linebacker on the board, this would probably not be too early for him. This might be just right. I'm going to think you did offensive line. That's my guess.
I think that would be smart, to be honest. If they decide just to invest in their offensive line, there's a tackle, Broderick Jones available. The two best guards are still available. That's the direction that I would go. However, I can see Washington talking themselves into, hey, there's a top 5 player on the board right here. We're going to be a physical team. Let's run the crap out of the ball. Let's take Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Ron Rivera has history with drafting running backs in the first round. Obviously, with Christian McCaffrey, he had Jonathan Stewart in Carolina. Maybe he views Bijan Robinson and Brian Robinson together as, hey, this is our 1-2 punch. We don't want to expose our rookie or our second-year quarterback a lot. Let's run the ball, play defense, and grind our way out to 9 wins.
Boy, that's interesting. That's interesting because Philadelphia is going to fortify their defensive front. The Giants' defensive line played very well last year. I think better than Dallas's did. Is running the ball the way to make hay in the NFC East and squeeze out a 7th seed at 9-8? They were 8-1 last year, Washington, but 4th in the division. Is this the way to do it? Are you thinking let's make Sam Howell's job a little bit easier? We went and got offensive linemen in free agency. Oh, gosh.
And the way that they...
Yes. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It's just that, listen, there's not a lot of positive pub coming out of Washington right now. You've got a coach who's on the hot seat. You got a team that's for sale right now. But you grab somebody like Bijan Robinson, who most people view as a top 5 talent in this class, a generational running back prospect. I wouldn't take a running back this high, but I could see why.
I'm shocked that you did. Why him? Why him? What's special about him?
I mean, he can do it all, right? He's got a fantastic combination of size, power, speed. He can make you miss. He can line up as a slot receiver. It's kind of like if you put Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson together, you get Bijan Robinson. And I just don't see this team being able to pass the ball super well. So if you could run the ball, do some play action stuff, maybe you can win a lot of 19-17 type of games.
Yeah, it was driving me crazy. It was like, who the heck did Washington get in free agency on the offensive line? It was Andrew Wiley. I had to look it up. Kansas City. I could not think about it for the life of me. I was like, you've already fortified the line. Okay, man, this is an interesting one. I would not have gone here. I'm shocked at you.
It just seems like everybody around the league agrees he's not getting out of the top 20. So at some
point, why not here?
Yeah, so why not here? At some point, some team is going to draft him that doesn't really have a need at running back. I mean, I thought about the Patriots. I thought about the Packers even. I thought about Washington. He's almost like a placeholder here at 16.
Well, I'll tell you, my final thought on this mock draft is I'm going to stick with Washington here. If one of these quarterbacks falls, at 16, they're within distance, to go do something. And maybe they take a chance, but you feel like this is the year for Ron Rivera. Maybe he feels more comfortable himself going with the quarterback he already knows that he's already had and how. But I could see Washington moving up potentially.
I will say there is still one quarterback on the board that I have, Will Levis from Kentucky. We haven't had him picked yet. He's going to come off the board rather quickly when we get to part 2. But again, Ron Rivera's on the hot seat. I don't think he wants to draft another quarterback and kind of go through the growing pains of that in year 1. Remember, they also signed Jacoby Brissett. Maybe they just roll with Brissett, roll with Bijan Robinson, and try to grind again.
Run the heck out of the ball.
Yep.
And I still think, we'll see with Chase Young back, if that defense is better, they should be. maybe they can win some games last year. This is a team that we have to remember won 8 games last year, So anyway, that's my final thought on Washington. What's your final overall thought looking over your draft here?
The second part of round 1 is more fascinating. There's so many teams that draft between 17 and 31 that are just maybe one decent player away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So that's my little tease to make sure you check out part 2 of this podcast coming out tomorrow.
All right. We will get part 2 to you, as he said, tomorrow. For now, we're going to get out of here, but we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Interesting draft, man. Super interesting. If you want some takes on the Cowboys draft, head over to Locked On Cowboys. Marcus does that with Landon McCool. He also writes for Pro Football Focus and covers the Raiders and their draft for Raiders Wire. He's at Marcus_Mosher on Twitter. I'm at Harrison NFL on Twitter. We thank the really good people like Herbert and Courtney, who's being very quiet right now, at Brinks. We'll talk to you guys later. Take care, everybody.